My dad kicked me half naked into a blizzard at 13, but years later my brother's message blew their world apart. Reddit stories. 13 years after being thrown into the snow like garbage, I'd built a life they swore I'd never have, until the golden child cracked and confessed everything. That single message dragged the past out of its grave and sent my entire family spiraling into the collapse they'd earned. Hi, I'm Liam, 26, and the night my life split in two happened when my dad kicked me half naked into a January blizzard while screaming that I didn't deserve to live. 13 years later, one message from my golden brother lit the fuse that finally blew their whole world apart. I grew up in a house where survival wasn't a metaphor, it was the daily agenda. Dad worked construction and came home with two moods, furious or more furious. Mom was the emotional black hole who could cry on command but couldn't parent to save her life. And then there were my siblings. Jonah, 4 years older, the chosen one. Captain of everything, hero of nothing. And Tessa, 2 years older, professional victim, amateur sociopath. Both of them realized early that if they cried loud enough, pointed fast enough, or lied convincingly enough, I'd get hit instead of them. And I did. Every household has a language. Ours was footsteps on the stairs. The weight of silence. The creak of Dad's leather belt when he pulled it off the hook. I learned fast how to breathe quietly, how to make myself invisible, how to sense when a storm was coming before anyone spoke a word. The night everything snapped started like 1,000 others. Wrong place, wrong time, wrong thing blamed on the wrong kid. But there was one difference. That night, Dad got the story from Jonah. And when the golden child spoke, Dad didn't hear words. He heard gospel. It was mid-January, temperature hovering somewhere between unpleasant and why does this planet hate humans? I was 13 and small for my age, the kind of kid who couldn't afford to grow because stress had to put its calories somewhere. I got home from school, tried to stay invisible, and barely made it to my room before I heard Dad shout my name like a death sentence. I already knew I wasn't getting out of this one clean. I just didn't know yet how bad it would get. Or how much Jonah had finally screwed up. Or how Dad's rage was about to go from a habit to a defining moment in my life. But here's the funny thing about hitting rock bottom. Sometimes, if you wait long enough, it grows a trapdoor. And beneath that is something sharper, colder, and far more dangerous, memory. 13 years later, Jonah would reach out to me with a trembling, desperate message that started with, "Hey, can we talk?" And even before I opened it, I knew. Karma had finally come home. And I wasn't planning to give it a chair. Dad's summons always sounded the same, sharp, clipped, dangerous. But that night had a gravity to it, the kind of tone that made even the walls tense. I stepped into a hallway just in time to see Jonah standing beside him with that blank, calculated expression he used whenever he'd done something bad but didn't plan on paying the price for it. "What did you do?" I asked him, which, in our house, basically meant, "What am I about to get blamed for?" Jonah didn't answer. He didn't need to. Dad shoved a crumpled envelope in my face. "You think I'm stupid?" he growled. I didn't recognize the envelope, but I recognized the handwriting on it, Dad's boss. A man who scared everyone except Jonah. Inside was a write-up for stealing equipment and lying about it. Something expensive, apparently. Something Jonah definitely took, because Jonah always took anything not nailed down. But admitting that would mean consequences, so naturally, the family mascot pointed at me. "He's been sneaking around the garage," Jonah said. "I saw him taking stuff last week. He probably tried to sell it." I blinked. The lie wasn't even good. Forget selling. I didn't have friends, much less a black market connection. But Dad wasn't after truth. He was after impact. "You stole from my job?" he roared. I stepped back. "I didn't even know anything was missing." "Don't talk back," was the warning slap, open-handed, fast, familiar. Then came the shove into the wall. Then the accusation monologue. Then Mom peeking into the room, not to protect me, but to perform the obligatory sigh and shake her head routine about how stressful I made her life. Tessa wandered in, chewing gum like this was prime entertainment. Yeah, she chimed in lazily. I saw him, too. She hadn't. She'd been at dance rehearsal all week. But truth was optional. Loyalty, in our house, meant choosing whichever side gave you the most comfort and the least bruises. Dad grabbed my shirt. Where is it? I don't know what. He hit me again. Not hard enough to knock me out, just enough to break the seal on something inside me, something that used to be hope. You think you can ruin my reputation? He barked. You think you can embarrass me? Embarrassing him was the worst crime. You could break a window, crash a bike, spill gasoline on the driveway, but embarrass him, make him look bad at work, cost him pride? That was treason. He dragged me toward the front door, screaming about ungrateful kids and worthless mistakes. Mom did her best statue impression. Jonah folded his arms like the prosecuting attorney. Tessa recorded it on her phone because she liked rewatching my worst days. And then, he opened the door. January wind knifed into the hallway. Snow whipped across the porch. The temperature felt like something invented by a villain. Get out. Dad, I'm barefoot. You don't deserve shoes. I didn't do. He shoved me so hard I landed on the ice. The door slammed. The deadbolt clicked. Just like that, I wasn't a son anymore. Not a punching bag. Not even an inconvenience. I was garbage to be thrown out. I remember lying there, skin burning from cold, breath fogging, thinking two things at once. 1. This might actually kill me. 2. He really meant it. But rock bottom has a funny way of building ladders out of people you barely expect. Mine arrived in a rusted pickup truck with a grumpy old man behind the wheel, my grandfather. The only adult who'd ever looked at me without malice or disappointment. He pulled up like he already knew. And maybe he did. Get in, kid, he said, tossing me a blanket. Your father's just forfeited every right he ever had. I didn't know it then, but that night didn't break my life. It freed it. I didn't understand what rescue looked like until I saw Pop standing in the doorway of his house, jaw tight, eyes furious, not at me, but for me. He wrapped me in 2 blankets, sat me by the heater, and called my parents with the quiet, lethal tone of a man who had been patient his entire life and had finally run out. I'm filing for emergency custody, he told Dad. You kicked a child into a blizzard. You lay one finger on him again, and I'll make sure a judge sees the photos, the bruises, the medical report, and every damn thing you think you've gotten away with. Dad yelled something about discipline, something about respect, something about my son. But Pop cut him off. You don't have a son anymore. That was the moment my childhood ended, and my life started. The next few years were a rebuilding project. Pop didn't have money or space or energy to spare, but he gave me the one thing nobody else ever had, a stable floor under my feet. He taught me how to change oil, fix a leaky pipe, read a contract, and fold anger into ambition instead of collapse. Meanwhile, my family rewrote the narrative. Dad told anyone who'd listen that I had run away. Mom claimed she had no idea things were that bad. Tessa posted vague Instagram quotes about toxic people removing themselves. And Jonah? Jonah lived like a king. Dad bought him a truck, paid for baseball camps, talked about him like he was the heir to a dynasty instead of a kid who couldn't spell responsibility without Google. The distance between us grew until it was its own geography. But here's the thing about growing up in hell and then escaping: you don't forget the map. You don't forget who pushed you into the fire. And you don't forget the one person who pulled you out. I spent the next decade turning spite into fuel. High school. Straight A's. College? Engineering scholarship. Career? Aerospace design firm with a starting salary big enough to make Dad choke if he ever saw it. Savings? Aggressive. Paranoid. Unapologetic. House. Bought it at 25, 3 bedrooms, big garage, quiet street. Pop? Moved in with me the day he retired, and for the first time in my life, the word home meant something other than survive quietly. I built everything they swore I'd never have. Everything they said I didn't deserve. Everything they tried to break out of me. And then, like fate has a sense of humor, Dad showed up. Not with an apology. Not with humility. Not even pretending to be remorseful. He stood in my driveway looking around like a landlord inspecting property. So you finally did something right, he said. Good. You've got space. I'm moving in. He said it with the confidence of a man who had spent his whole life taking without earning. A man who believed biology was a lifetime subscription to my obedience. A man who thought the child he tried to kill with cold would still feel duty toward him. I looked him dead in the eyes, and something inside me clicked, clean, sharp, final. No, I said. You're not. That should have been the turning point. That should have been the moment he realized the past was over. But Dad treated boundaries like insults. You owe me, he snapped. I raised you. You kicked me out at 13. You provoked me. You almost killed me. You survived. Didn't you? It was the kind of logic only abusers use. Hurt someone, call survival proof that the harm wasn't real. Pop came to the porch then, arms crossed. You heard him. Leave. Dad glared at both of us, but something in his eyes shifted, rage mixed with desperation. He didn't leave because he accepted the boundary. He left because he had a plan. 2 weeks later, I got a message from Jonah. After 13 years of silence. Hey, can we talk? And the second I saw it, I knew. This was the beginning of the end. Jonah's first message looked harmless enough, just a lowercase, hey, sent at 11:42 p.m., which already told me everything I needed to know. Nobody sends a lowercase hey at midnight unless their world is burning down and they're looking for a fire extinguisher they previously set on fire. I ignored him. 5 minutes later. We need to talk. Ignored. 10 minutes. It's about Dad. Ah. There it was. The gravitational pull of family dysfunction. Nobody calls until the bomb is already mid-detonation. I waited until morning before replying with the emotional equivalent of a brick wall. About what? Jonah responded instantly, like he'd been sitting there refreshing the screen. Stuff from back then. I want to make things right. That line should come printed on the inside of every fortune cookie handed out at a family therapy session. You had 13 years. I wrote. Why now? He paused for nearly a full minute, then sent. Dad's losing it. I won't lie, that got my attention. Not because I cared about Dad spiraling, but because Jonah using the word losing meant something had already gone seriously wrong. What do you mean? He's obsessed again. Keeps talking about the past. About the lie that ruined everything. You know how he gets when he fixates. I did. Dad didn't process mistakes, he pickled them. Let them ferment into grudges strong enough to strip paint. But Jonah wasn't texting out of concern for public safety. He was circling the drain. Just tell me what's going on, I said. A long pause. Then, I think he knows the truth. Interesting. The truth about Dad's job write-up. The truth Jonah blamed on me. The truth that got me thrown into a snowstorm in my underwear while Jonah watched from the doorway. I decided to test him. Pop said he heard Dad telling people someone lied to him years ago. Something about his kid betraying him. The typing dots popped up instantly, frantic. What exactly did Pop hear? Something about garage equipment. Something about the wrong kid getting punished. Jonah froze. Typing dots vanished. Reappeared. Vanished again. He was fighting himself, trying to calculate the least damaging version of honesty. Then came the confession. Fine. It was me, okay? I took the equipment. I messed up. I blamed you because I panicked. I thought Dad would get over it, then he didn't. I'm sorry. It came out in one messy paragraph, a digital exhale of guilt wrapped in self-preservation. I read it twice, screenshot it, sent it to my email, cloud storage, And a drive so old it probably still had photos from middle school on it. He followed up with another message, then another, longer, angrier, scared. Dad's snapping. He won't listen to me. He keeps saying someone ruined his life. He's going to cut me off if we don't tell him together that it was just a kid mistake. He trusts you more. He'll calm down if you back me up. There it was. Jonah didn't want forgiveness. He didn't want closure. He didn't want reconciliation. He wanted insulation. He wanted me to stand beside him so Dad would divide the punishment by 2. Will you help me? He asked. I typed back. Yeah. I'll handle it. And in a way, I did. Just not the way he meant. Because the next thing I did was simple. I forwarded the entire confession to Dad. Then I put my phone down and went back to my day. By lunchtime, I had 17 missed calls. By evening, 34. When I finally checked the last voicemail, Jonah was sobbing, begging, shouting, sometimes all in the same sentence. Please tell Dad it's fake, please. He's lost it. He beat the hell out of me. I can't stay here. He kicked me out. Just tell him anything, please. I ended the message with a tap. There was no satisfaction in hearing him break. Just symmetry. The same symmetry fate had tried to give me at 13. Only now I was old enough not to freeze in it. At 13, I was thrown into the cold. At 26, I finally learned how to let someone else feel it. The family meeting, text came 2 days later. No greeting, no explanation. Just coordinates and an order. Tonight. 7 p.m. Your mother's house. Be there. Dad. The second message arrived 10 minutes later. This is not optional. Whenever Dad said things weren't optional, he meant he expected obedience. What he didn't realize was that obedience had expired the night he locked the door on a freezing 13-year-old kid and walked away. Still, I went. Not for them, for closure. For the moment the past finally had to look me in the eyes. Mom's house looked exactly the same as it always had, cheerful outside, miserable inside. I walked in without knocking. There they were. Mom, hands wringing, performing stress like it was a one-woman show. Tessa, arms folded, pretending she hadn't cried recently. Jonah, in an armchair, jaw bruised, trying to look composed and failing spectacularly. Dad, standing in the middle of the room like a judge about to read a verdict. On the coffee table sat his laptop. Open. Waiting. Jonah saw me and flinched so hard the chair creaked. Why is he here? Dad didn't answer him. He just clicked a key, and my screenshot, Jonah's full confession, filled the screen. Dad's voice was disturbingly calm. Explain. Jonah tried. Lord, he tried. The man could spin lies like cotton candy, but tonight the machine jammed. That's not, I didn't, I mean, he tricked me. Stop, Dad said. Jonah's mouth snapped shut like someone had pressed a mute button. Dad leaned in. I made you show me the message thread on your phone. Same text. Same timestamps. Same confession. Jonah swallowed. Hard. You took from my job, Dad continued. You let me beat the wrong kid. You let me throw out the wrong kid. And you let this go on for 13 years. Mom gasped, suddenly remembering she had a maternal instinct when the lighting was flattering. Tessa stared at the carpet. Jonah whispered. I was scared. Scared of what? Dad barked. Telling the truth? Taking responsibility? You weren't 13, you were 17. Old enough to drive a car, but not old enough to stop destroying your brother's life? Jonah tried to stand. Dad slapped him across the face so hard the room echoed. The same sound I'd heard my entire childhood, now landing on the right person for the first time. Mom jumped up. Honey, stop. Dad pointed at her. Sit. She sat. He turned to Tessa. And you? You backed him up. She shook her head. I didn't know. You lied because it was easier, Dad said. You watched your brother get punished for something he didn't do, and you did nothing. Tessa started crying. Real tears this time, not the weaponized kind. Dad looked at both of them, disgust rising in his eyes like smoke. "You're out," he said. "Both of you. Out of my life. Out of my house. Out of my will." The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. "Dad," Jonah's voice cracked. "Please. You want forgiveness?" Dad snapped. "Earn it like he did." He pointed at me again. "Work. Suffer. Start from nothing. See how it feels." I said nothing. I didn't need to. My silence was its own language. Dad looked at me then, and something broke in his face. Pride? Ego? Denial? Maybe all three. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I was wrong. About everything. I hurt the wrong son. I let that hang in the air." He waited. He needed absolution the way a drowning man needs air. But I wasn't God, and I wasn't a lifeguard. I was the kid he left in the snow. "No," I said. "You don't get that." He closed his eyes. Not angry, defeated. "What can I do?" he asked. "Nothing. It's done." I turned toward the door. Behind me, the family I grew up with collapsed in real time, Dad too shaken to salvage authority, Mom crying into her hands, Tessa pleading through tears, Jonah frozen in humiliation. I didn't stay to watch. I'd already lived that scene once. This time, I got to walk out. 2 mornings later, I caught movement through the front window, someone pacing on my porch, shoulders hunched, clutching a duffel bag like it contained the last scraps of his life. I didn't need to see his face to know who it was. Jonah had the posture of a man who just discovered gravity applied to him now. He knocked. Then knocked harder. Then pressed his forehead to the door like he could will it open. I let him wait a full minute before cracking the door with the security chains still latched. He looked awful, eyes red, jaw swollen from Dad's slap, hair unwashed, clothes wrinkled, a smell that suggested he'd been living in his car. "Hey," he said, forcing a smile. "Can we talk?" "No." "Come on, man. Just hear me out. You're done talking. You confessed. Dad saw it. I don't owe you a conversation." He tried to wedge his hand through the gap in the door. I shut it enough to make him move. "I need a place to stay," he blurted. "Just for a few days. Just until I figure things out." "No. I'm your brother." I laughed, not loudly, just enough to make him flinch. "You're a guy who watched me get beaten for something you did, let me get kicked into the snow, and then lived 13 years of comfort while I rebuilt my life from ashes. That's what you are." He clenched his jaw, anger flaring. "I said I was sorry." "No, you admitted you were scared." "Not the same thing." He stepped back, rubbing his arm. "I don't have anyone else. Dad kicked me out. Mom won't take sides. Tessa's broke. I'm homeless, man." "That sounds like a series of consequences," I said. "Not a moral emergency." He stared at me, desperation turning into accusation. "You're really just going to leave me on the street? After everything we've been through?" "Everything I went through," I corrected. "You just watched." Then I shut the door. Locked it. Walked away. He pounded for a while, shouting, begging, cursing, bargaining. All the stages of grief in under 5 minutes. Eventually it went quiet. I heard his car engine cough to life. Pop walked in from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "That him?" "Yeah." "Feel bad?" Pop asked. "No," I said. Pop nodded once. "Good." And that was the end of that conversation. For about 4 hours. Because then the flood started. Texts. Missed calls. Voicemails. Jonah had switched tactics from groveling to guilt-tripping to self-pity to a greatest hits remix of all three. "You're heartless. You're abandoning your family. You think you're better than us now. You ruined my life by telling Dad. I trusted you." That one nearly made me laugh out loud. He trusted me. The same way I trusted him at 13. The same way he watched my trust collapse on a snowy porch. Meanwhile, Tessa tried a different approach, strategic victimhood. Long paragraphs about how Dad cutting them off had left her struggling emotionally, in a bad place, needing her brother to step up. Mom left voicemails heavy with sighs and self-pity, talking about how the family is falling apart, and we all need to come together. Nobody said a word about what they'd done. Nobody said a word about what Dad did to me. They just wanted the family structure restored so they could go right back to pretending I was the strange, ungrateful one who ran away for no reason. I blocked all three. Peace returned instantly. Dinner with Pop tasted better that night: pan-fried chicken, roasted potatoes, and the quiet comfort of two people who actually mattered to each other. Later, as I cleaned up the kitchen, Pop leaned against the counter and asked, "What now?" I thought about Jonah's bruises, Tessa's tears, Mom's letters, Dad's rage. Then I thought about my house, my rules, my quiet, my hard-earned life. Now? I said. Now nothing. They made their decisions. I'm just not carrying them anymore. For the first time in years, the air in my chest felt light. Not empty. Clear. A month passed. A quiet one, the kind of quiet that feels earned. I got up early, went to work, came home to Pop reading on the porch, spent weekends fixing up the garage like it was a second sanctuary. No surprises, no late-night emergencies, no family drama clawing through the phone lines. Until Kendra showed up. I was leaving work late, a long day, too many deadlines, when I saw her leaning against her car in the far corner of the parking lot. Head down. Arms locked across her chest like she was holding herself together with elbows alone. My stomach sank. Not because I feared her, but because I already knew the script. She straightened as I approached. "Hey," she said softly, like we were old friends and not two people whose childhoods were built on opposite sides of the same lie. "No," I said immediately. "Whatever this is, the answer is no." She stepped in front of me. "Liam, just listen. 1 minute. That's all I'm asking. You had 13 years of minutes." Her jaw tightened. "Dad wants to talk. Not my problem. He wants to make things right," she said. "With you." I laughed. A short, sharp sound that cut through the cold evening air. "No, he wants to make things useful. For him." Again. Her eyes flicked downward, guilt, or the closest thing she was capable of. "Look, he's not doing well. Money's tight. He's talking about selling the house. He doesn't know what to do. None of us do. And you think I'm his solution. You're his son." I raised an eyebrow. "Since when?" She flinched. "Good. Dad's willing to help you," she continued quickly. "Like financially. Down payment on a bigger place. Or a loan for something. He said whatever you need." Ah. There it was. The real pitch. She didn't want reconciliation, she wanted reinstatement. She wanted me to soften Dad's heart so hers could slide back into the will behind mine. This wasn't love, or guilt, or growth. It was strategy. A bad one. "You're trying to negotiate your way back into his inheritance," I said flatly. "Liam, that's not—" "Don't lie," I snapped. "Not now. Not to me. You want Dad to forgive me so he forgives you. That's the play." She went pale. "We're family." "No. You're a group of people who shared a house and learned to survive by feeding me to the wolves. That's not family." She blinked hard, like she wasn't used to hearing the truth said without tremor. I walked past her, but she grabbed my sleeve. "It wasn't easy for me either," she whispered. "I was scared." "So was I said. "But only one of us paid the price." Then I got into my car and closed the door. She stood there staring at her shoes as I pulled away, her silhouette shrinking in the rearview until it disappeared. That night, as I came home, Pop was sitting in the living room polishing a wrench. He looked up. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. They keep trying. Of course they do. People don't like living with the consequences they earned. I dropped into the chair across from him. You think I'm doing the right thing? Pop didn't answer at first. He set the wrench down gently, like each word needed room. I think, he said, you finally understand the difference between a family you're born into and a family you build. His voice was steady. Mine felt steadier just hearing it. Don't forget, he added, you don't owe anyone the version of yourself they tried to break. I nodded. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about protecting myself. I felt free. A few weeks later, life settled again. Quiet routines, early mornings, late dinners, the kind of steadiness I used to think only existed in TV sitcoms. Pop and I had fallen into our groove. He handled breakfast, I handled repairs. We split chores like we were running a small, peaceful kingdom of two. I should have known the calm meant something was about to break. It happened on a Thursday night, always a Thursday, as if the universe liked giving me weekend problems. I was in the garage, elbow deep in a project I'd been putting off, when Pop knocked on the doorframe. You expecting company? He asked. No. Well, something's happening out front. I wiped my hands on a rag and followed him through the hallway. Pop stepped aside so I could see through the blinds. A car I didn't recognize. Headlights off. Engine running. Someone sitting inside, shoulders hunched, unmoving. At first I thought Jonah, because chaos loves repetition. But the silhouette was wrong, smaller, tense in a different way. Then the door opened. And out stepped my mother. I hadn't seen her in person since the family meeting. She looked older. Smaller. Makeup smudged. Hair pulled back like she hadn't had the energy to style it in weeks. She stood in my driveway holding a purse like a shield. Pop let out a slow breath. Want me to get rid of her? I shook my head. No. Let's see what she wants. I opened the door but didn't step aside to let her in. Hi, sweetheart, she said, voice wobbling. Don't call me that. She swallowed. Can we talk? You have 1 minute. Outside. She hesitated, glanced at the house behind me, as if hoping Pop wasn't listening, as if she deserved privacy now. But she stepped back. We stood under the porch light, the air sharp and cold enough to sting. She opened her purse and pulled out a thick envelope. This is for you. What is it? Letters, she said. Ones I wrote you, after you left. I didn't know where to send them. And you thought now was a good time? She shook her head. Liam, I know I failed you. I know I wasn't the mother I should have been. But things are bad now. Your father is worse than ever. He's angry all the time, drinking more, blaming everyone. He says you turned your brother against him. I almost laughed. Jonah turned himself. She looked down. He's losing control. He's ruining everything. And I'm scared. There it was. Not remorse. Fear. When Mom felt unsafe, she didn't seek truth, she sought the strongest proximity. Growing up, that meant siding with Dad. Now, she was calculating new shelter. Liam, she whispered, I need your help. No, I said instantly. Please. No. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. I know I didn't protect you, but I'm trying now. I'm trying to fix things. You're not trying to fix anything, I said. You're trying to survive. Same as always. She closed her eyes, shoulders sagging. I don't know where else to go, she said. Dad's furious at me. At everyone. You're the only one he'll still listen to. He won't listen to me. And I won't speak to him. Her lips trembled. He wants a meeting. With you. To apologize. I shook my head. He wants absolution. There's a difference. She didn't argue. She knew I was right. The porch light buzzed overhead. Behind her, the car idled like a getaway option. I'm not saying be his son, she whispered. But if you don't talk to him, I don't know what he'll do. Then stop living with him. Her eyes flicked open. I can't. He needs me. I let out a breath. Mom! I don't care what he needs. She stared at me for a long time, like she was trying to reconcile the son she used to control with the man she couldn't. Please, she said. Just sit down with him once. No. Her expression shattered. Fear, anger, disbelief, all of them fighting for space. You're really going to abandon us? She whispered. You abandoned me first. She froze. Then she stepped back, clutching the envelope to her chest like it might stop the truth from sinking in. I hope someday you understand why I did what I did, she said. I already understand, I replied. You picked the side that scared you less. She didn't deny it. She just turned, walked to her car, and drove into the dark. I stood there for a long time after she left, the cold biting through my sleeves, Pop watching quietly from the doorway. You okay? He finally asked. Yeah, I said. I think I am. But as I looked down at the envelope she'd left behind, heavier than its size made sense for, a strange certainty settled in my chest. This wasn't over. Not even close. The envelope sat on the kitchen counter for 3 days because neither Pop nor I wanted to be the one to touch it first. Not because we were afraid of the contents, but because we both understood what it represented. Opening it meant acknowledging that the past was stirring again. Ignoring it meant pretending it wasn't. On the 4th morning, I came downstairs and found Pop at the table, envelope open, a stack of folded letters beside his coffee mug. He didn't look up. You said I could read them, he murmured. I didn't say that. He shrugged. You also didn't stop me. Fair. I sat across from him. Well? He tapped the top letter. She wrote all these over the years. Never mailed a single one. His voice was calm, but there was weight in it. You want the summary? No sugarcoating. He snorted. Do I ever? Then he began. Letter 1, she says she misses you. Letter 2, Dad was struggling and she didn't know how to handle it. Letter 3, money problems, discipline problems, blaming everyone but herself. Letter 4, she feels guilty. Letter 5, Jonah is doing great and she wishes you could see how proud Dad is. I exhaled, slow and sharp. Of course. He kept going. Letter 6, she heard you made honor roll and she's happy for you. Letter 7, Dad is drinking more. Letter 8, Tessa crashed the car, but she blamed you for stressing the family. I groaned. That tracks. Letter 9. Pop continued. She says maybe you'll grow out of your anger. I laughed out loud at that. My anger. Letter 10 is interesting, Pop said, sliding it across the table. Read it. I unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, rushed. Liam. Your grandfather called today. He said you're doing well. He said you're safe. I hate him for taking you from me, but I hate myself more for letting it happen. Your father says you'll come back when you're older. I don't believe him. Sometimes I think you're better off without us. Sometimes I think I am too. Mom. I stared at the paper, then at Pop. You didn't tell me she wrote this. I didn't know until now. I folded the letter slowly, deliberately. It doesn't change anything. No, Pop agreed. But it explains something. What's that? She never defended you because she never defended herself. I didn't respond. Not because he was wrong, he wasn't, but because the implications were starting to settle in my chest like dust on forgotten furniture. Before I could say anything, Pop nodded toward the fridge. Another thing came for you. An envelope sat clipped under a magnet. Thick. Official looking. Government seal. Oh. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper. A summons. Not for court. For a mandatory mediation session. Between me and my father. Pop raised an eyebrow. You expecting that? Not remotely. It specified a date, 2 weeks out. A location, Neutral County Building. And a subject. property dispute/familial obligations. My stomach tightened. Property dispute? Dad didn't own anything worth disputing. Familial obligations? That was worse. That was vague. That was legal language meant to grab you by the ankles and flip you upside down until your pockets emptied. Pop leaned back in his chair. Well, definitely not over. I folded the paper and set it on the table. He's making a move, I said quietly. A big one. Pop stared at the summons like it was a lit match on dry leaves. What do you want to do? He asked. I looked at the document. Then at the letters. Then at Pop, the only person who ever chose my well-being over his convenience. I want, I said slowly, to see what he thinks he can take from me. Because if Dad wanted a legal fight, mediation, arbitration, whatever strategy he'd cooked up, he was about to learn something I'd learned at 13. I survive winter. He doesn't. The mediation room was smaller than I expected. Gray walls, one rectangular table, 3 chairs on each side. Neutral territory, the kind of place designed to make everyone feel equally powerless. Dad was already there. Thinner than before. Eyes bloodshot. Jaw clenched so tight the muscles trembled. He didn't look at me when I walked in. He stared straight ahead like he'd rehearsed this moment, and didn't want to break character. The mediator, a calm middle-aged man with glasses, opened a folder. Mr. Hawthorne, your filing states you're requesting financial support from your son. You claim he has a legal sortable Hawthorne in the form of adult child responsibility. Can you explain? Dad exhaled sharply. Liam makes good money. A lot. He has space. He has stability. I need somewhere to live, and he owes me. The mediator blinked. He owes you? I raised him. You abandoned me, I said quietly. Dad's jaw twitched. I did what I had to do. You were out of control. You nearly cost me my job. You were stealing. I have your son's confession, I said, sliding a printed copy of Jonah's messages across the table. Dad froze. The mediator read it silently. His eyebrows climbed. Then he turned back to Dad. Sir, this is extremely concerning. This demonstrates that your son, he tapped the page, was abused, blamed, and removed from your home under false pretenses. That undermines your petition. Dad's face went red. He's lying. The messages came from Jonah's number, the mediator said gently. And you acknowledged them in the meeting your family held. The color drained from Dad's cheeks. Finally, he snapped. Fine. I made mistakes. But that's in the past. He has a house. I don't. He has a job. I don't. He has money. I don't. He's supposed to take care of me. The mediator folded his hands. That's not how the law works. Dad leaned toward me, eyes wild. You're really going to sit there and let me drown? After everything I did for you? I met his stare without flinching. You didn't raise me. Pop did. That hit him like a hammer. A real, physical impact. His shoulders sagged. For the first time in my life, he looked small. I'm your father, he whispered. No, I said. You're the man who taught me who not to be. Silence washed over the room. Heavy, final. The mediator cleared his throat. I'm denying this claim. There is no obligation here. In fact, he hesitated. Mr. Hawthorne, you may want to prepare for potential legal consequences arising from past actions. Dad didn't respond. He just stared at the table as if it might offer him a different ending. When the session ended, he didn't follow me. Didn't shout. Didn't threaten. As I walked past him, he simply asked, voice hoarse, Is there anything I can say to change your mind? I paused at the door. There was, I said, 13 years ago. And then I left him behind, finally, permanently. Pop was waiting in the truck outside. That bad? He asked. No, I said, climbing in. Worse. For him. Pop nodded once, satisfied. You hungry? Starving. We drove home. My home. Our home. And for the first time, the past didn't follow. It stayed exactly where it belonged, behind us.